The subject of my talk today is decreasing risk when selecting third-party IP. Usually customers face the question, do we go outside for IP or do we rely on people inside to develop the IP products that they're going to need? And increasingly they tend to concentrate their own internal IP developers on those areas of the secret sauce, what differentiates their product from the competition, and rely on third-party IP for those functions that otherwise would be reinventing the wheel. So still in doing that, you give up some of your control because you're dealing with a third party rather than your own people. So the question is, what can you do before the sale to reduce your risk after the sale? Well, first there's the selection process, choosing and making sure that you're selecting the optimum IP for your system. And part of that is getting the best vendor that's going to support you most rapidly, as if it were a member of your own staff, at least from a responsiveness point of view. Then there's the implementation. It's got to have the correct functionality. As the design progresses, there may be some functions that are required that otherwise weren't thought about in the beginning, so that functionality has got to be incorporated into the IP, and the vendor that's supplying it has got to be responsive to that need. It's got to be a complete package. I like to call it shrink-wrapped IP, so that nearly any knowledgeable engineer can unload the IP, can unwrap it, basically use the documentation together with the tech support, and move through the process of implementation smoothly. It's got to be easily integrated. It can't be such that it's only been done once or twice before and all the pitfalls haven't been really worked out. It's got to be thoroughly well-tested, well-documented IP. And the organization must be responsive to your to your ongoing support requirements. In general, the bottom line when dealing with outside IP is, will it be a positive experience, or is it going to be a frustration? And if it's a positive experience, by and large, the quality is reflected in the product, the delivery and tape-out schedule is made, and a fine quality implementation results. Before we go into more of the details, I have a few pet peeves that I thought I might talk about. And it seems to me in this industry there is a predominance of confusing literature, or literature that doesn't say much. In my terms, marketing BS. And a lot of it happens when marketing departments are populated with not very technical people, maybe very well pedigreed MBAs, but don't really understand the fine details of the product that they're trying to describe. And in my opinion, anytime you can look at a website, a web page, a brochure, and read prose that's written and you could lift it, cut and paste, literally take it from vendor A and paste it into vendor B's documentation, that's marketing BS. It's not something that's really given an insight and into the product itself. Furthermore, I find a lot of companies are paranoid. They're afraid they're going to divulge some critical secret that the competition is going to read and hammer them on. So they're reluctant to give out numbers such as gate counts or power numbers or anything that would give an insight into the real differentiators, what processes are documented. There's a whole host of things that very often customers would like to have that are not provided. Are there people that you're dealing with? Are they technically competent people? Very often companies employ salespeople that aren't necessarily really experienced in electrical engineering. They're good salespeople. They understand the selling process, very important to understand it. But from the customer's point of view, they don't really answer their questions very often. They don't have the technical experts. And that may be okay provided they're able to engage the technical experts quickly so that the customer's time is not wasted. Another pet peeve of mine is commission driven. I remember years ago, there was a phenomenal company that was based in Maynard, Massachusetts, named Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC, that revolutionized the world of mini computers. And Ken Olsen, the president, refused to have a sales force that was commissioned. Why? Because it has the potential, and not necessarily does, but it has the potential of corrupting the customer-vendor relationship. If the person that's responsible for the front end is strictly driven by money, then the support and the long-term value can be at jeopardy. And it's just, there are possibly better ways to do it. Within our company, for example, we have never had a commissioned sales force. I won't say we never will, but I don't anticipate any time in the near future where we go to commission. In my mind, why should a sales guy be commissioned with an engineer that's working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to make a beautiful piece of IP, not getting part of that action? Doesn't make sense. It's just because you can measure it, or because the company is driven for short-term 3-month financial goals. That's not a good enough reason in my mind. So be leery of commission-driven organizations. And there's some identifiers you can see, and if you can spot that syndrome, you're likely to run into some problems later on in the implementation phase. And lastly, do they have a proven track record? Awfully important. And in this day and age, you can talk to customers. You can find out what kind of track record they have in supporting customers like you with your kinds of requirements. Does the vendor help you buy the right IP? What's their application expertise? They're not going to be experts in your particular application, but they ought to be experts in the IP they're trying to sell you. And they ought to have the inquisitiveness, or the curiosity, to really understand what you're trying to do so that they at least can help you or consult with you on what the right choice is. And the technical support. Is it timely? Do you get effective replies? Do you get access to developers in the development organization if needed? And what does it take you to do that? And there's a wide range of differences in the IP industry in the answers to those questions. Do they let you try it for yourself? A company has to be flexible. They can't set a bunch of rules that say this is the way you, Mr. Customer, will evaluate it. I have a customer right now that's starting to evaluate. He actually wants to put it into silicon. He wants the source code. Well, I'm sure we're going to provide it. We'll make sure that we're legally protected. But it's a big company. The big worry in this industry isn't that somebody's going to steal your intellectual property. Worry might be that you've got to provide the level of support. You want to make sure that what you're doing is with people that can execute what their plan is, and there is a plan and it is well written down. Does the company waste your time? And that can happen over and over by unrealistic rules that govern the selling process. I'll talk about a couple of examples. Example one is in the area of an 8051. Everybody's heard of 8051s. CAST is a leader in the providing of 8051 IP that's used widely today. There's hundreds of chips that have been developed and used primarily in the mixed signal area with 8051s. And some years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I was contacted originally by this fellow who had a very, very small company, but he was a smart guy. And he was asking questions about the 8051. I knew he wasn't going to be able to buy it the way, but he was pretty open with me. So I spent the time with him, or we spent the time. I had some of the other people from CAS work with him. Time went on, he didn't have the money. The next year came by, he said, well, I think that we may get acquired, and if we do, we may be able to buy or license your IP. Time went on, it didn't happen. Another year went by, and finally he said, Hal, bear with me, it's going to happen this time. I'm quite certain we're going to be acquired, and you're going to get an 8051 out. Great, fantastic. And so time went on, he did get acquired, And then he called and says, Hal, I really have to apologize. I didn't know at that time, but the company that's buying us has their own 8051 IP, and I'm being forced to use it. Well, okay, you win some and you lose some. Not the end of the day. You can lose a sale, but never, ever, ever lose a customer. That's the worst thing that can happen. Well, about 3 or 4 months later, I got a call again, and he said, Hal, I've been trying to use the IP from Internet for 3 or 4 months, and it's not working. Can you send me an evaluation copy? I said, sure. And can you support me? Because if I can make this thing work, we're going to get a sale quicker. I said, great, Paul, we'll do that. And in less than a week, and with full back and forth many times during a weekend, I think we did this on a Thursday or a Friday, and by Monday and Tuesday it was up and running. And he accomplished more in that 3 or 4 days or 5 days than he was able to do with the internal IP in 3 or 4 months. So it has to do with support, documentation, and what's provided. So they purchased the 8051 and they met their schedule. Another one is a more current example. This is a USB 3 subsystem. This is a company that's a 3D video processing application for TV. This is all the hot thing now. 3D TV and LCD screens, etc. The latest whiz-bang stuff in television. I know, I just went out and surveyed it and I ended up buying one. But they needed the USB 3 for an integrated USB 3 and processor subsystem for a new product line that they were doing. Again, it was a small company outside the US when we started dealing with them. They had lots of questions, and Cass worked with them and helped them develop the specification, all at no cost to them, and the spec involved more than 100 emails. So this wasn't just a standard piece of IP, it was an integration of some standard IP and the glue logic that pulls it all together and some special needs that they had. Cass then, under contract, provided them a prototype board with a USB 3 and 8051 IP core subsystem, the necessary device drivers and suitable software stacks to make their application run. And then we assisted them in their FPGA prototyping phase, all under this support contract, involving more than 100 plus emails. Well, this small company is no longer a small company. It is a huge tier 1 company that is based here in Silicon Valley. So again, the company may be very small, and you might lose a sale now and then, but never lose a sale. You can always lose a sale, but never lose a customer. Does the vendor just accept your spec? Do they have sufficient expertise to provide advice, i.e. upfront consulting, as part of their selling process? When engineers are defining a new design, they're still in the architectural phase and are thinking about different ways to solve the problem. When they approach us for a piece of IP, it's not always the optimum. And by engaging with them on a technical level, we oftentimes find a better way to do it and a lower cost. An example, we license a JPEG 2000 core, very high performance, sophisticated core, but it's a little more expensive than some other solutions. And in one particular case, or in a number of cases, it's just too expensive for a customer's project budget. And then Cass sometimes suggests a combination of a JPEG and a lossless JPEG core to cover both their lossy and lossless requirements at a lower cost. Can you try the IP for yourself? Are there ready-to-run evaluation kits and boards that have been packaged by the vendor that allow you to actually run the evaluation yourself? Are there instruction set simulators for processors that you can run on your computer systems and run against some code that you're developing? Are there bit-accurate models for algorithmic simulation for things such as H.264 or JPEG or lossless JPEG? Things that allow you to actually run clips or test cases of your own through a bit-accurate model. Do they have precompiled models for hardware simulation? Are there encrypted net lists for area and timing characterization? Do they have time-limited FPGA net lists for system-level prototype? These are all various tools that can minimize or can make the evaluation process much less painful than if they're not present. Examples, running compression algorithms on your own media. We have an application package for both our H.264 and a J2K, and an application board that allows customers to actually run this in an FPGA that has been programmed with our IP and run their own clips, their own video clips, or their own images through to test the final solution. And also in exercising a processor in a hardware system, trying it with your own peripherals. We have an evaluation kit with a little small board, and it's shown in that photograph down below, together with debugging tools that allows people to actually implement in less than a day the processor and run some of their own test code against it. Is the vendor a viable partner? Are they organized for customer effectiveness? Not having a large, powerful financial infrastructure that acts like a sales prevention group or a group run by engineers rather than MBAs. It's been my experience that an awful lot of rules get put in place that are inflexible and that cost the customers time and money in their evaluation process. NDAs, for example. NDAs can take an enormous amount of time, and they shouldn't. They're all basically all the same. So the approach we take is usually to use the NDA of the customer that we're working with rather than our own NDA, because they're all the same anyway. And the last thing we're really worried about is some major corporation walking off with our IP or stealing our secrets. We want to be protected against for any information they give us and we give them. But an NDA is pretty much a standard document now and shouldn't take a lot of time. A true, pervasive, customer-oriented culture. Do customer problems get the highest immediate priority? A customer down in any good, credible organization ought to have the highest priority, including the application of the engineering people that otherwise might be working on something that is necessary to meet a fourth quarter revenue goal. So a real orientation toward the customer and customer problems is critical in this business. And do unresolved customer problems trump all other engineering priorities? They should. So what can you do? One of the things is get a product manual and assess the quality. Look at the documentation. Look at how clear it is and how well it's organized and written. Is it something that you could use and is better than you'd probably get from your own engineering group? If it's not, you ought to be leery. Ask the vendors to work with you in defining an evaluation process and schedule. This should represent an investment in time and resources by both parties. It should not, unless it's a detailed implementation plan, that it's going to require more than a standard look through and addressing any concerns of the product that the customer might have. It should represent some time and resource investment on both parties. Identify the boundaries of your own secret sauce and the non-unique IP functionality, and rely on outside experts for integration of standards-based IP blocks. A great USB 2.0 is probably not going to win you a new sale, or a 3.0. It's not going to win you a new sale, but it could lose you the business if it's not of high quality and well supported. Ask for customer references and interview them. We do this all the time, but it's important that it be done carefully and with the agreement of the customer and with some background of the customer so that they know they're not flying blind when they get the phone call from a particular person. It should be set up at a time with some background information so that both sides feel as comfortable as possible in going through the reference process. Customer feedback. Customer comment regarding corporate photo. This is an actual quote. And one person, this customer told us, it took me longer just to get an NDA signed with this company that begins with a capital S and ends with an S than to do a complete JPEG evaluation with CAST. And that's back to what I talked about before of letting paranoia and corporate governance get in the way of meeting customer requirements. Back to example one, that 8051 example. That customer has now bought multi-use licenses, and they've done multiple chips. They've executed several chips since then. Cast numerous enhancements in performance and infrastructure and flexibilities far surpassed what their internal group could achieve. So in fact, now they're 100%, and this is a major tier one fabless semiconductor company, is using our IP predominantly over what they have internally. Will support continue after the sale? How eager and capable will their post-sales support be when you need it the most? Are they willing to work nights and weekends when you really need the support? Back to example two, that USB 3 and 8051 combo subsystem for the 3D TV application. Post-sales, they changed their architectural requirements and introduced new functionality. As they went down the path, they said, these are some left out, so these are some things we didn't think about. CAST produced two inexpensive, non-recurring engineering quotations and made the changes at a pretty reasonable cost. Support continues with CAST, maintaining a duplicate of the customer's hardware setup and conducting daily calls to ensure that they meet their ASIC tape-out schedule. And that schedule is just about to be met. It's a tape-out within a week or two now. So picking an IP vendor you can trust is critical. In our case, we've been doing this for a while, since 1993. We have over 1,100 customers, 1,100 IP sales to more than 650 customers today. We have a global network and support with instant response and access to developers. And our offerings are technology independent, covering ASICs and FPGAs. All the IP selection risk reducing aids we've discussed are available. I hope that this brief discussion of reducing IP risk has been helpful. To find out more about CAST and our products and how they can help you reduce your own risk, visit our website, www.castashing.com, or give me a call anytime. Thank you very much.